Hello and welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan along with Kathryn Peterson, and today's going to be a fun one because I get to interview my co-host. Kathryn was just recently in the Dallas-Fort Worth area attending the Momentum Builder Sales Mastery event, and she's going to help us review a lot of the things she got to experience firsthand, as well as give us some previews of some things she learned in that room from not only some of the presenters that were there, but a lot of the real information gets traded in the hallways and out in the foyer and sometimes at dinner. So I'm excited to unpack all of that. But before I set it up further, welcome back into the frame, Kathryn Peterson. Great to see you today, Kathryn.
Good to see you too. And it was a great event. I'm excited to break it down.
Yeah, let's do that. Look, I think for our audience, whether they're downloading this in, recent to the event or maybe a little bit down the road, let's make sure that we cover it both in terms of, what you saw, what you experienced, and some of your key takeaways, as well as some of the evergreen things that you might have learned, things that are going to matter to us as the months progress and we head into 2026. Because that's always what's exciting to me about these conferences are, not just what was the emotion of, oh, I got to run into a friend or two, but what were the real key takeaways that continued to be in my thoughts and in my process over the following months? I'll be interested to hear you plant some seeds that we can follow up on as the months progress. So, tell me about the overall experience. First time this event had moved out of out of California ever, and first time it wasn't in Palm Desert for a long time. What was it like going to Dallas Fort Worth?
It was definitely different, but it was good because it's an area that there's a lot of mortgage people in. So people who maybe weren't able to come before were there, and that was great to share that experience with them. So it was a good spot, and I got to see a bunch of Dallas people that I know well.
That's great. So, I know that our friend Todd Duncan MCs this event, but it was also put together by a team that had merged with Sales Mastery, the Momentum Builder team. And so you've got Don, you've got Gino, and you got our good friend Craig Davis. How did the crew do?
They did great. I think it's interesting to merge those personalities. So we heard a lot about that and we got to see them on stage a lot more. So it was fun. It was definitely, it's a big event with so much to organize. So I can't even imagine, but they had some great speakers and I'm excited to talk about those.
Okay. Well, how many days are you there, and what did day one look like when you arrived?
Yeah, so day one is registration leadership forum, which I missed that section of the event, but the kickoff is really at night. And that's always fun because it's lots of energy. It's in the evening. Typically arrives that day. So that was great. And one of the things that kind of is a signature to the event is Todd Duncan really takes the lead on that evening session. And he talked about what imaginary boundaries are holding us back that we maybe don't even know are there. So, are we putting ourselves in a glass box or a glass cage? And those might be things like, hey, what do I have that I'm underestimating? Or am I telling myself, oh, it's too late, or I'm too old, or I'm not good enough? Those kind of pieces and parts. So that was great to think through. I think that was kind of a good overall theme to the event that kind of got my brain thinking a little bit of, hey, how do I really think about this stuff? But something else that he said that I thought was interesting is the mortgage industry's superpower is change. And we're all really, really good at dealing with change. And I think we aren't because it seems painful, but really, if you think about it, we've all gone from paper files to Calyx to Encompass to, a specific LOS. I mean, we're making changes constantly in our industry. And sometimes we're just so used to it, we forget that one of our superpowers is change. And I thought that that was a helpful
That really
thing
resonates,
to think
Kathryn,
through.
and I talk about that with clients. So it's really good to hear you describe the way Todd's presenting it to a group from the stage, because often we maybe don't feel excited about change because it takes energy. It's sometimes frustrating, maybe even in some cases exhausting. But the truth is, you're right. It is an industry that, if we look back, we realize it really does constantly ebb, flow, and evolve. And I'm will sometimes say to folks, if you don't enjoy change, I hope you enjoy irrelevance, because that's the alternative. You know, if you're
Right.
if you're going to stay relevant in this world, you've got to evolve. So good for Todd for setting the table. Okay, so this evening was, it sounds like maybe more of an emotional foundation. Let's get your head in the right space. Let's get your heart in the
Mhm.
right space. How did we leave that evening and pivot into the next day?
So one of the other things that he did was an exercise where we said, okay, find a partner, change 5 things. And everybody grumbled. And some said, I don't have 5 things to change, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, okay, now change 10 things. Now change 20 things. And sure enough, you were able to come up with those things. And the point was, hey, sometimes you don't realize like the adjustments you can make. And so you have to think outside the box. So I think at one point, I saw Denise put her shoe on her head. Um, Someone put a balloon in their shirt, like just silly things. So that was kind of the point of the exercise. So that was kind of setting you up to, hey, just learn throughout the event. And that brought us into day 2.
So unpack that a little further for us.
Yeah.
What happens once you get back into the room and you're now all in the right headspace?
So one of the things that I thought was interesting was Michelle Berman spoke, kind of like about what is your check engine light telling you?
Mm.
Okay. So your check engine light comes on in the car and it's not a failure at that point. You're still driving, but it's feedback. Okay. So she kind of talked through a little bit about social media and hey, it's not just about likes and follows. It's those are the wrong measurements in our life. It's about who are you connecting with? Is it bringing business in? So her main like key takeaway was reach out to somebody you don't know using the name of someone you do know to meet new people. And that
Mm.
was kind of her challenge to the group, which I thought it was pretty interesting. The other quote I wrote down that I wanted to share was burnout isn't doing too much, it's doing too much of the wrong thing.
Mm. That definitely resonates because there's some truth to that. Yeah, and
Mhm.
she just authored her book. I think it's
Yeah,
the Black Lion, if I remember correctly.
that sounds correct to me too.
Yeah, good,
So,
good.
yeah. So that was good. We also heard from Jim Murphy. So if you remember during a playoff game, there was a football player on the sidelines reading a book, and that book shot to the top of the Amazon bestseller list. And that book was Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy.
Okay,
And so he spoke, and he's a very like deep centered person. So it was when he speaks, people listen is a good way to describe him. And I think we'll just do a future book club episode. I did grab an
love it,
extra book for you, so it will
love
be
it.
headed your way shortly. Um, but one little teaser that I can bring up before we do a future book club episode, we both have to actually read the book, so it's not going to happen immediately. But
Sure.
courage is the most important thing. Everyone has fear. Most successful people are not afraid to be afraid.
I love that. And by the way, it sounds like the way you set him up, those of us of a certain age that might be a lap or two ahead of you on the track, we remember a guy named E.F. Hutton back in the 70s. And the quote was, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
Hmm, there you go.
So there you go. We've got
There's
him.
the
All right,
second
good.
one.
So that's Jim. And anybody else that stood out to you on day 2 or any other
Yeah.
presentations that were powerful?
Yeah. So Tom Ferry spoke and he has so much energy. One thing that I find very counterintuitive about him is he speaks really fast, but people listen because he speaks fast. And I think that's actually a great strategy. I was like, wow, he's one of the people who can really get away with that. But he was talking about, hey, it's not the market, it's you. Like, do your thing, create momentum. He talked about ego versus economics. Getting ready is a myth. You start, you suck, you figure it out, you get better. And he was like, hey, do these few things to get yourself more searchable on AI. He was just information packed. We could probably do an episode on just that. If you haven't looked at what he's doing lately, look him up and listen to some videos.
Yeah, his presentation got featured on a lot of people's posts last week.
Hmm.
So I did see a lot of that content coming up. And yeah, I've been in a room with him. I'm definitely aware of the energy as you describe it. And I know my friend Bill Hart is a big fan of his. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that he was a keynote and a big hit.
And one thing, I think this actually came from the day before, but um, they asked people, look yourself up on Chat GPT. Hey, who's which mortgage lender should I use in Dallas? And see what pops up. And you have to start thinking about that because people are not using Google. So that was an interesting exercise that I think probably everyone in that room did at some point on day
Yeah.
one or two.
Yeah, yeah, you're right about that. It is interesting to see that there are certain people that think chat is like the new search engine, but the reality is it's got so much more than that, and it's drawing people away from Google on
Hmm.
many levels. Although Google has its own AI built in, so
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that people are thinking about that because you're right. The uh, the strategy can't be invisibility. You've got to think about how do we remain visible in a
Yeah.
world that's using these tools in which to interact. Okay, good. I'm excited so far. Keep going.
Yeah. So Neil Dingra, who is definitely out there, he's kind of a social media master, especially with Instagram, talked and basically he kind of described, hey, all views are not equal. And it's not just about getting the visibility, it's about turning that into leads and into, closed deals, no matter the industry that you're in. So there was a lot of tips that he had there. So the question was, how can I make myself more findable for people who need my service? And I think as we approach social media posting, that's a great thing to think about. Um, and then another thought that I wrote down was most people are holding back the one thing that will connect them to the most people.
Hmm.
And I thought that was interesting because it could be like it. So I'm going to give
Yeah,
this weird
where did that
example.
hit for you? Because that now that
Yeah.
intrigues me.
So I think some of it is like for me, I'm a little bit goofy, right? And people um sometimes like I have very strange conversations wherever I go in my life and I run into amazing people because I'm curious, right? You and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't always post about that, and I probably should
Hmm.
more. Like one of my best posts ever was questions I get from the Uber driver because I typically strike up conversations with every Uber driver that I have, and that's just kind of how my life goes. So that's a good example.
Oh my gosh, you are gonna hate when I'm sorry, not Turo, when Waymo takes over.
Yeah,
You're
that's
not gonna
right.
you're not gonna have any new conversations. Um, well, that's great, Catherine. I'm really glad to hear that you're thinking through how to apply this because, in addition to, of course, wanting to get the overview of what you experienced, it's really good to hear what you're starting to think about and how you might implement from what you heard or what you learned because that's what I hope our audience will do because clearly not
Yeah.
everybody was in the room and a lot of folks will be listening to this episode who maybe didn't have the privilege of being there, but want to get a little taste of what they might have missed. So, anything else you want to make sure that you covered, whether it was a presenter or a guest, anybody else that stood out to you?
Yeah, there was two. Both these were guests on
Okay.
our podcasts in the past. So Craig Davis, he was episode 72, if you're wondering. Change is inevitable, but
Hmm.
growth is not. And I thought that was pretty good.
And so, put some context to that because I like the quote. Well, what was he hoping to inspire with a quote like that?
Yeah, so basically you have to do your own work as things are changing to grow yourself, is how I took that.
Yeah, you're responsible for it. And that's good.
Hmm.
That's good, Craig. Yeah, he clearly is an interesting guy. We both like him on a personal level, but I think he's finding his lane and he's also launched his own podcast recently, so it'll be
Hmm.
fun to hear him expand on some of his thoughts with some of his guests. So that's great. And you
Yeah,
said there was another podcast guest who made an impact.
that's right. That's right. Ken Perry, who we both know and love. He was one of the last speakers of the event, and I wish more people would have been there because some people had to catch an earlier flight,
Mm.
etc. But he talked about our need for connection and like really connecting with people, remote workers. So, one of the takeaways I took from that, I mean, his talk was amazing, but was hey, we all have remote workers right now. I do, I have two. Reach out to them and say, hey, data says that we need to have social connection. How are you doing that? And then dig in a little bit on that because that's super important. Reach out to those people, make sure you're creating those connections in person if possible, get together, do stuff, create those social connections because that's really what is really important right now. And that definitely spoke to me as Ken Perry typically does.
Yeah, well, obviously we both love the guy, Ken, who's not just a friend, he's a partner of Building Champions, and we certainly have invested a lot of energy together over the years. One of the thoughts that comes to mind, even as you say that, is, Ken was really powerful during the COVID season. He was really powerful when we
Mm-hmm.
were all in an environment where stay at home or shelter at home was a mandate and a required thing. And well, he certainly had respect for the reason behind that. He was quick to point out there's a cost to this, and some of the cost impacts our mental health. It really impacts our emotions. It
Mm-hmm.
impacts our connections. So to hear him 5 years later still bringing that thread back into the storyline assures me that that wasn't just him being topical because we were in a COVID season. That's a deeply rooted passion in that guy. And here's the good news. I don't think you'll find anybody better than Ken at connecting people or staying connected or giving people that boost that we all need of, hey,
Mm-hmm.
somebody saw me, somebody cares. He's just great at it, and good for him for reminding the audience of how important that is. I'm really glad to hear
Mm-hmm.
that. He was also, a thought leader. I want to give him credit for this too. He was a thought leader when AI was at the forefront. If you go back to 22, and we were just beginning to talk about AI, but we didn't know what to think about it. He was always the guy who employed the other KP, Kathryn Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
the other KP's magic power, which is curiosity. He really preached a message of be curious, don't be afraid, like learn about it, ask questions. So Ken, if you're listening out there, I'm so glad that you continue to press on these messages, whether it's AI, whether it's personal connection. It sounds like, as Kathryn Peterson reported back, it is a well needed message, and I hope we're giving you a second life for folks to go back and review that and re listen to it, even if they weren't able to be in the room. Kathryn, any closing thoughts on Sales Mastery? I'd love to hear anything that you took that you
Mm-hmm.
would say this is now shaping, how I'm gonna reflect on the year I've had, or prep for the year ahead, or get my team thinking differently. What are some tactical takeaways that our audience can take because you're going to take them and you're going to apply them? Give us a preview.
Yeah, so there's definitely some things that I was thinking about, and some of those involve change and process and just kind of setting my team up for, hey, things are going to adjust in our industry and we have to grow and learn. So that's a really big part of what we do every single day. The other pieces is what are those glass boxes between it being social media or how we're connecting or I'm not able to do this, things like that are holding us back from really achieving more than we thought possible. So those are all kind of some things. But also for me, I'm hoping to be a little bit more free on my videos and just maybe expose myself a little bit more because there's all these crazy stories I have, and I have to get those out there into the world because even though they might be a little quirky, they're probably pretty fun.
Well, we'll let the audience decide that. But here's the good news: is I love it that you're gonna be true to yourself. You're gonna let folks see the side of you that all of us get to experience when we're with you, which is that curious, fun-loving, engaging side. And maybe we'll learn a little bit as we learn about your experiences and you share more about that. I'm really glad you're stepping into the danger zone. That's a good spot to be in. The live without a net is a good place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so true. And people are drawn to people who are authentic. And I think just to kind of wrap up the conference, the speakers that are authentic to themselves always shine through in any event. And so I think that's important for all of us to think about, as far as what are we presenting and is that really us? And if so, people will be drawn to it. And that's a great thing.
So, as a close, Kathryn, one of the things that I look forward to most when I get to go to events like these, and I'm only going to assume is the same for you because you and I have been at several events together, is I love running into people that I didn't know were going to be there or I didn't expect, but as soon as I saw them, my joy just jumped like, oh my gosh, there's that person that I got to see. Did you get some of those experiences? Because I think that's sometimes where the magic is. It's not who's on the agenda or who's on the stage,
Mhm.
it's who you get to run into in the hallway.
Yeah, John Donnelly was one of those. I was like, oh, John, you're here. I'm so excited because I actually thought he was in a different town because he had made a post
Yeah.
that he was somewhere else. And he might have been earlier that day, but I was like, oh my gosh, you're here now. So I didn't get to chat with him very long. We sent you a quick picture, and that was it. But I saw a ton of people who I hadn't seen in a little bit, have been on our podcast, people I haven't met in person, but have been in our pod on our podcast. So that was pretty fun. And then there was a bunch of people who I didn't know that I got to meet. So it was, as always, a great event. They had a cornhole tournament. They had a happy hour that included puppies, which I did not see the puppies, but I did see the people. So it was a great event.
Sounds like you had a great time. I really appreciate you taking the time today to recap it for us. And I guess in closing, Sales Mastery will continue. Will we have another event in 2026? Did they give a preview of what's to come?
There is one. They were doing signups. I think it's going to be in Dallas again. Don't know the dates.
That's okay. As long as I know that there's, because that's always the question I get is, are they going to keep doing this? Is it going to keep happening? And I think that's something folks look forward to when they're doing their annual calendar
Mhm.
planning is where are the events that I want to attend. And Sales Mastery, for those of us who've been, at least in the mortgage lending space, that's been one of the centerpieces of the year for 30 years. So I'm glad to hear that it continued in 2025. And I really appreciate your recap. So thanks for doing that. That's a wrap on today's episode of Building Bigger Lives. We hope you'll join us each Wednesday as we drop an episode that we hope enriches you in some way, personally or professionally, as we invite guests, as we bring topics to the table, and ultimately we try to empower those of you with the entrepreneurial spirit to continue growing and building a bigger life. Thanks for joining us.